Hello and welcome back to our channel. For those of us who have spent decades walking the turbulent streets of Port Charles, we know that peace is merely a fleeting illusion, a brief intermission between devastating storms. As a longtime fan and someone who has dedicated countless hours to analyzing the intricate tapestry of General Hospital, I find myself utterly captivated by the current, rapidly escalating storyline involving Jack Brennan, Nina Reeves, Drew Cain, and Willow. It is a narrative web so densely woven with past grievances, profound debts, and explosive secrets that it demands our utmost attention. We have watched generations of families rise and fall, and yet the impending collision between these particular characters feels uniquely dangerous. The stakes have never been higher, not just for their physical survival, but for the very souls of those involved. When we look at the trajectory of these legacy characters, we must ask ourselves how they reached this precipice of mutual destruction. The answer, as always in our beloved soap opera, lies in the complex intersection of love, betrayal, and the unyielding desire for retribution. Let us first examine the fascinating dynamic between Jack Brennan and Nina Reeves. According to the latest developments, Brennan is fiercely determined to repay Nina for saving his life. This is not a simple expression of gratitude. In the shadowy, high-stakes world that Brennan inhabits, a life debt is a sacred, binding contract. I have always found Brennan to be a character of chilling calculation, a man who operates several moves ahead of his adversaries. Yet, Nina has managed to anchor him to a profound sense of obligation. As a critic, I see this as a brilliant narrative choice by the writers. It elevates Nina from a perpetual victim of her own emotional impulses to a woman who holds significant, albeit dangerous, leverage. Brennan has promised Nina and Willow that he will apply intense pressure on Drew Cain, acting as their formidable shield and enforcer. However, we all know that relying on a man like Brennan is akin to making a pact with the devil. The protection he offers is never free, and the cost of his intervention is poised to demand a devastating toll on Nina's personal life. Why does Nina continually find herself in these agonizing predicaments? It is a question that has frustrated and fascinated me for years. Nina's tragic flaw has always been her desperate, almost suffocating need to protect those she loves, often resorting to extreme measures that ultimately backfire. By enlisting Brennan to neutralize the threat posed by Drew, she believes she is securing her daughter Willow's future. But at what cost? The narrative explicitly warns us that this alliance will exact a heavy personal price. I suspect that Brennan's methods will be so ruthless, so deeply compromising, that they will alienate the very people Nina is trying to save. Furthermore, Brennan's involvement is a massive complication that threatens to unravel the fragile peace Nina has fought so hard to build. Is it possible that in her frantic attempt to shield Willow, Nina is inadvertently constructing the very explosive device that will shatter their lives? The tragic irony of Nina Reeves is that her profound maternal instincts are inextricably linked to her most catastrophic decisions. This brings us to the astonishing evolution of Drew Cain, a storyline that is currently taking a remarkably dark and unexpected turn. We are learning that a character named Joe is instrumental in helping Drew wake up, both in a literal and metaphorical sense. For a long time, Drew has been portrayed as the honorable, if somewhat lost, twin, the former Navy SEAL, whose moral compass, while occasionally skewed, generally pointed toward justice. However, this awakening, facilitated by Joe, seems to have unlocked something deeply sinister within Drew's psyche. As a longtime viewer, I find this psychological shift both jarring and incredibly compelling. We are witnessing the systematic deconstruction of a hero. The trauma, the betrayals, and the physical toll have evidently stripped away Drew's noble veneer, leaving behind a man consumed by a terrifying, singular obsession. It begs the question of what exactly Joe awakened in Drew. It appears to be a dormant, ferocious capacity for vengeance that we have rarely seen from him before, a darkness that threatens to consume everything he once held dear. The most shocking revelation in this entire saga is the true target of Drew's newfound obsessive wrath, which is none other than Willow. The narrative indicates that Drew is actively preparing to attack Willow in a quest for revenge. This is a monumental pivot that fundamentally alters the landscape of Port Charles. Why Willow? To understand this, we must delve into the shocking twist that is about to be unleashed upon us. The storyline suggests that Willow is intrinsically tied to a violent act against Drew, specifically that she is the one responsible for shooting him. If we pause to consider the implications of this, it is absolutely staggering. Willow, the perennial moral compass, the gentle mother, and the fiercely protective woman being cast as a would-be assassin? It is a narrative gamble by the writers, but one that pays off in pure, unadulterated, dramatic tension. Drew's obsession is born from a profound sense of betrayal. He is no longer seeking justice. He is seeking absolute annihilation. Let us deeply analyze this potential reality of Willow as the shooter. As someone who has watched her character evolve from a timid schoolteacher escaping a cult to a formidable woman in her own right, the idea of her pulling a trigger is profound. What could possibly drive her to such a desperate, violent act? Was she protecting her family? Was she manipulated into a corner where she felt she had no other choice? Or did the immense pressure of the surrounding chaos finally cause her to snap? Whatever the justification, the act itself has irrevocably altered her destiny. Drew's impending attack is not merely a physical threat, it is a psychological siege. He intends to dismantle her life piece by piece. I believe Drew sees Willow not just as his attacker, but as the embodiment of all the hypocrisy and hidden darkness in Port Charles. He wants to expose her, to drag her down into the abyss with him. This dynamic transforms their impending confrontation into a deeply personal, incredibly toxic battle of wills that will leave collateral damage for years to come. As if this powder keg were not volatile enough, we must now factor in the formidable presence of Alexis Davis. The information reveals that Alexis is preparing to publicly expose Willow as the person who shot Drew. This is a masterstroke of storytelling. Alexis has always been a character defined by her complex relationship with the truth and the law. As an attorney, a former district attorney, and a journalist, she has spent her life navigating the murky waters of morality in Port Charles. Why is Alexis choosing to insert herself into this deeply dangerous situation? I argue that for Alexis, uncovering the truth is an uncontrollable compulsion. She cannot stand by and watch a false narrative prevail, even if the truth destroys someone like Willow, whom she has generally viewed favorably. Alexis's readiness to blow the whistle adds an immense layer of legal and social peril to an already deadly situation. When Alexis drops this bombshell, the fallout will be apocalyptic. We have to consider how this revelation will ripple through the community. Everyone will be forced to take a side. Alexis is not just exposing a crime, she is detonating a nuclear device in the center of the town's social hierarchy. I have always admired Alexis's fierce independence, but I must question her wisdom here. By exposing Willow, she is inadvertently giving Drew exactly what he wants, which is Willow's public ruin. How does Alexis realize that she is playing directly into the hands of an obsessed, dangerous man? Or does her commitment to the truth blind her to the fatal consequences of her actions? As a critic, I adore this complication. It forces the audience to grapple with the ethics of truth-telling when the truth itself is a weapon of mass destruction. It makes us question whether justice is always synonymous with what is morally right in the grand scheme of things. Now, let us bring these volatile elements together and examine the inevitable cataclysmic clash between Jack Brennan and Drew Cain. On one side, we have Brennan, the cold, calculating operative who has pledged his lethal skills to protect Nina and Willow. On the other side, we have Drew, the battle-hardened soldier driven by a manic, unyielding thirst for revenge against the very woman Brennan is sworn to protect. This is not going to be a simple boardroom brawl or a shouting match at the Metro Court. This is shaping up to be a tactical, bloody war of attrition. I find the contrast between their methodologies fascinating. Brennan operates in the shadows, utilizing leverage, intimidation, and precise strikes. Drew, fueled by his recent awakening and blinding rage, is likely to be much more direct, erratic, and brutally forceful. How will this war unfold? Brennan will undoubtedly try to neutralize Drew before he can strike at Willow. He will use every resource at his disposal to systematically dismantle Drew's life, his finances, and his support system. But Drew is a survivor. The survival instincts that kept him alive in captivity have now been weaponized for revenge. I foresee a scenario where Drew outmaneuvers Brennan's initial traps, leading to a direct physical confrontation. The tragedy here is that this war is entirely avoidable, yet completely inevitable due to the stubborn pride and deep-seated traumas of the men involved. As viewers, we are strapped in for a masterclass in suspense. Every time these two men cross paths, the tension will be thick enough to cut with a scalpel. Who will emerge victorious? In Port Charles, victory is rarely absolute. It is usually measured by who manages to lose the least when the dust finally settles. At the dead center of this raging storm are Nina and Willow. The narrative promises that the future for this mother and daughter is ready to explode, and I cannot think of a more accurate description. Their relationship has been a torturous journey of missed opportunities, bitter resentments, and fragile reconciliations. Now they are bound together by a terrifying secret and a mutual threat. Nina's desperate pact with Brennan and Willow's horrific secret regarding Drew's shooting are converging into a singularity of disaster. As a fan who has watched Nina weep for her lost child for years, it is profoundly heartbreaking to see that their ultimate union might be forged in the fires of a criminal conspiracy and a desperate, clawing fight for survival. The ultimate question is whether the impending explosion will destroy their bond permanently or fuse it into something unbreakable. When Alexis exposes Willow, Willow will become a pariah. She will face the loss of her freedom, her family, and her hard-earned reputation. In that moment of utter devastation, who will stand by her? Nina will? Despite all her flaws, Nina's devotion to her daughter is absolute. I believe this crisis will force Willow to finally see the depths of her mother's love, even if that love is expressed through the dark, manipulative channels of Jack Brennan. However, the sheer weight of the guilt, the fear of Drew's retaliation, and the public shame might be too much for Willow's psyche to bear. The writers are pushing these two women to the absolute brink of human endurance, testing the limits of familial devotion against the harsh realities of criminal consequence.